Let's see.
We haven't done that.
Yeah, we've got to last time. Okay, it's going.
Okay. My name is Becky Geetson.
Okay, I'm Evelina Calder.
Amanda Cooper.
I'm Annalise Lofgren.
Okay, sweet. So our first question is, what do you think it means that all people are entitled to their own opinions, but not to their own facts?
I feel like that one's kind of like self-explanatory. Like you read the question, it kind of like answers like, I don't know. Like everyone has their own opinions, but that doesn't mean that what their opinion, like that their opinion's right. I don't know.
I know.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought that, there's certain things that are just facts. Like there's certain dates when things happened, and it doesn't matter what your opinion is. It's still the same date that it happened on. You can have an opinion of when you were born, but it doesn't matter. You were still born on a certain day, so there's a certain facts that are facts, and your opinion doesn't change that. It's like just that's the way facts are. So, you're entitled to your opinion, but
yeah, it reminds me a lot of, I don't know, I tried to find the talk that it was in, but it's that there is a classroom of students who were like in second grade or something like that, and they found a cat, and it was in a general conference talk, and they wanted to know if the cat was a boy or a girl, and one of the kids is like, oh, let's vote on it. And it's just kind of the concept that that like facts don't change just because people want them to, or like public opinion thinks it should. And like with the Studio C skit, it's just that like the George Washington wasn't the 26th president of the United States, and that's not negotiable.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then the quote at the bottom, for some reason I can't get my Google to open, but that quote at the bottom of our
the 50 million people can't be wrong.
Can't be wrong. Yeah. It's like they can't be wrong if you can have an opinion, but if it's a fact, you can be wrong if you're not following the facts. So
where does it say that quote?
It's in our group our instructions for our group discussion.
It says here, I can read it. It says Elder Nelson put it this way: the temptation to be popular may prioritize public opinion above the word of God. Political campaigns and marketing strategies widely employ public opinion polls to shape their plans. Results of those polls are informative, but they could hardly be used as grounds to justify disobedience to God's commandments. Even if everyone is doing it, wrong is never right. Evil, error, and darkness will never be truth, even if popular. A scriptural warning so declares, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, but put darkness for light and light for darkness." After World War I, a rather risque song became popular in promoting immorality. It vowed that 50 million people cannot be wrong, but in fact, 50 million people can be totally wrong. Immorality is still immorality in the eyes of God, who one day will judge all of our deeds and desires.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't realize that. I had a mission president, and he would always say, like, he'd always tell us this. He said, like, if like 5,000 people say a foolish thing, it's still a foolish thing. And I think that like goes right along with it. Like, just because a bazillion people say something that's not right doesn't make it right. But yeah, same kind of idea.
Right.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
Nope.
I think we're probably good. So the next question is, why can statements that begin with "I've heard" or they say be so dangerous when articulating your point? So for this one, I was just thinking a lot about Facebook and like Reddit and other social media sites. Anyone can post anything they want, and you can walk away from that thinking, oh, like everyone believes that or everyone thinks that, it must be right. And so, like, especially with the internet being so accessible to everyone, like a 13-year-old can post something, and if they have really great articulation, it can sound like a fact, and you could go around quoting it thinking it was right, and it's really not, you know?
Yeah, I think like to go along with that, like just the whole point of credibility, or credibility, there's another word for it, qualifications, I guess. Like if you're not qualified to like provide accurate information, I guess it's just an opinion. So when you say like I've heard from someone, or like they say, it's not anything concrete, it's just rumors. It's the equivalent, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times those types of ideas just get repeated over and over again, and they've never really been tested, and there is no validity to what has been said or is being said. And so they're just ideas that get passed around. And so there's like no real research to back up what's being said. So it's just.
Yeah, there's no way to like measure what's being said. No way to like, have any evidence of it, or examples or anything like that. So
yeah.
Okay, so for the next question, it says, so far we have learned the importance of having the doctrine in our hearts. Why do you think it's so important to have good science in our minds and mouths?
I thought this kind of went along with kind of some of the ideas we were just saying before, is that, it adds validity to what you're saying, so that if you have research that supports truth, it can add evidence to your ideas and your concepts when you have good science. And so when you have reliable research, that's important to add to truth. I think in the end, the Holy Ghost is what really reveals the truth best, but I think that it's important also to have good research.
Yeah, I agree. I think that even though the Holy Ghost is ultimately the one who's going to tell us and teach us truth, it is also easier to believe doctrine when it's backed up by like research and scientific data. So like the example of abstinence preventing AIDS, like abstinence has always been the Lord's way, but like science, obviously it doesn't even have to be science. Like clearly if you don't have sex, you're not going to get AIDS. Right. So like it seems like a no-brainer to me, but apparently it's not. And so that whole the whole documentary about HIV and AIDS in Africa, and how Uganda started preaching to their citizens that was the number one, like their ABC.
Right.
Did you get a chance to watch that yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just makes sense that doctrine is like, it's always first, but science just backs it up.
Right. Yeah.
I think too, like it's good to point out that like when we're educated and we have like the science in our minds and mouths, like we know both sides of the story, and we understand that like there are two sides, and we've researched both sides, and we still, like we're able to have an open mind and say like I've looked at both like objectively, and like this is why I believe this, or like there's, I don't know, you're just educated. There's education behind your opinion.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
that's something that I like really liked about BYU Idaho, was like even in my science classes or my math classes, like they always found a way to like tie in the gospel to it, and I feel like it was really helpful, like considering that like so that you still had the gospel and like the doctrine in your heart, but you also like were educated. Like they were really good at tying those two together so you could like see similarities and not be like, okay, these are contradicting each other, but I believe this. It was like everything tied together. And I thought that was like, I don't know, a really good way to teach, especially like at a church school, because then, yeah, you had that opinion, but you also had your beliefs so you could like base it on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's super valid. I agree. So the next question is relating to the other videos. So it says, if you were to pick a side on the Common Core debate strictly based on the information from evaluating research, which would you pick and why? Man, guys, I have so many opinions about Common Core. Like, I really loved watching this documentary because it like fueled my hate fire. Like even the music in the background of the documentary, it was like really ominous and it made me feel really anxious. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's really funny. But strictly based on the research and not my opinions, I would say that I would still stand against Common Core just because the writers of the curriculum only had 83% approval and they published it as 100%. And so like right off the bat, the Gates Foundation, like they weren't being honest with the like any of that. And the fact that they had to have the entire what do you call it? Sorry, I'm losing my thought. That they had to sign the confidentiality.
Right.
The did like that. It's all supposed to be public. Like it's for public schools, and so it just doesn't make any sense. And plus, there's no evidence to back up that an established like common curriculum would ever be good for children because like that just doesn't make any sense.
That's what got me was like, it seems dumb that there's only one way of learning for everybody. That's why I disagree. I was just like, you can't have one way of learning for, every student in the United States.
Yeah, and there was no research to support that, and that they have no data or analysis backing their reasons for Common Core and its effectiveness. They didn't take into account all perspectives. It was just their agenda that they pushed. It took me, I didn't even get into like the first couple of minutes when they said that they received 10,000 public responses. I go from a whole nation, you got 10,000 public responses.
Oh my gosh.
I had to stop the video and just sit for about 5 minutes before I could even go any further. And
I got so there were 325 million people in America, and there's 10,000 people who knew about this, and only 30 writers of the curriculum. So
I was like, yeah, I couldn't even go any further. So anyway, and then there was no discussion about research results and conclusions. So, I mean, it was like, I just went through that evaluating research article, and like almost every point was ignored about evaluating research and when it comes to the Common Core curriculum. So, and it was all done in secret. That everything was done. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I think it was just a mess. I don't know. You guys said it all. So.
This isn't to do with like the evaluating research part of it, but just the idea that this was established in like the heart of the 2008-2009 recession, and then they're like, hey, if you don't accept Common Core, then you're not going to get federal funding. Well, of course 45 out of the 50 states are going to accept it. And so at the beginning, when President Obama was like, yeah, like this has been accepted by the entire nation, you're like, no, you coerced the entire nation into accepting it. Like,
they want money.
Yeah.
They need the money. I think too, it's like, and also it's a good point that like when they said like, well, it's better than the old standards, but I think like having something that's like easier, I guess, to like throw this idea out there and it be like temporarily better, I guess, if some people do believe that. rather than like taking the actual time and making something that's really going to help these kids, or really going to help education. Right. I think is like a good point to point out. Like you said, it really was just a pushed agenda. Like, let's just get this through, and it was half baked, and
yeah,
it wasn't really ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. It says, do you think that much of the Common Core curriculum ignores empirically based, developmentally appropriate practices for children? Why or why not? Absolutely.
I think we kind of all agree, like, yes, it does.
Yeah, like, because Common Core, it's based on tests, and like tests in general are more of a way to like to test students' abilities to take tests and their time management skills. Like, standardized tests are not an acceptable way to gauge education or actual knowledge or ability to learn. And so that one quote when the guy was like, oh, where did he say it? 1 second, I wrote it down because I was so mad about it. It was that little old guy who was saying that that Common Core eliminates the possibility of creating lifelong learners. And like at BYU Idaho, like we're all about that. And so, yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think also, sorry, I'm trying to type and think at the same time. But I just wrote a paper the other night about developmentally appropriate practice. And when I watched the video, I was like, oh, there it does. Doesn't do that. Doesn't do that. Because like the whole point of developmentally appropriate practice is to like focus on the individual. And if you make everything the same, then it defeats the whole point of developmentally appropriate practice. So I think like it's just absolutely contrary to make everything the same or everything standardized when you're supposed to focus on the individual needs of the child.
Right.
And so it's backwards.
Yeah, that was my thought exactly, is that, you know, where education is supposed to be looking at the developmental needs of the child and fit the needs to the child, not fit the child to education. And so, yeah, Common Core is all about making children fit a certain mold instead of making education fit the needs of the child. And it totally ignores research and what has been shown to be good for children. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any more thoughts on that? Okay, sweet. So the next question says, what have you learned from cultural imperialism about the persuasive functions of research and science in creating cultural change? I just feel like, just from what I've seen in all of these situations, whether it's the AIDS epidemic or the Common Core or just any of the research that is funded federally, that opinion and money, or I mean like research and science take a backseat to opinion and money. And so like if the whole world thinks one way, then that's the way that things are portrayed as truth. And if everything is based on money and power, then there's no way to define what's really science and what's really people's opinions, except for like obviously using like techniques that we've learned, and also the Holy Ghost to discern that.
Yeah, that was my opinion too, is that research and science tends to take a back seat to people's opinions and power, so that no matter what the research and science says, if there's an agenda that somebody wants to push and wants to make everybody else fit their agenda, then that's what they're going to push. And that's, if they have the money and the power to do it, that's what they'll make. Obviously, the whole world follow, it looks like, if terms of what's happening in Africa and Uganda and those other places, we're just going to, the US is going to push their agenda on everybody, despite what research and science tells us. And even in our own country, based on what's happening with Common Core, you know, the opinions of others are being, despite what research says, we're changing our own culture here in America based on the opinions of others, and changing a whole system in the United States of how we teach our children.
Yeah.
Despite what research and science says. So research and science isn't as persuasive as I once thought it was.
I think also sorry, I'm talking a lot. I just have a lot of opinions. I think it's also just a lack of education on the part of what the research and science actually say. Because most studies that you ever have to read, you read the abstract and you just move on with life because the entire article is really long and boring and full of technical jargon. Yeah. And so I think it's just the fact that the common people educate themselves through social media and not through study and research.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I'm probably guilty of that. Like, it's easier for me to just do that same thing, you know, rather than like go through a whole article and I'm like, oh, this takes a lot of effort. But yeah, that's why I like at school, how they kind of like teach you how to like decipher those articles. But for people that don't do that anymore, you know, they just choose the easier route.
Yeah, let other people tell them how and what to believe.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. The last question is, what lessons have you learned to make you more skillful in combating your chosen topic or threat? I think that just it's kind of common knowledge if you're a student, but just looking in the right places for research to back up your opinion or whatever you're trying to establish. Just making sure the people that you're quoting or like reading articles from and like the method of learning is coming from the right places.
Yeah, and I also thought making sure to use quality articles to support ideas. Making sure that we have it's quality research, and that and I also thought it's important to be specific and clear when we're presenting our ideas on our topics, and not to be vague or you know, not use those phrases that, you know, like they say and stuff like that, so that when that there isn't misinterpretation when we are talking about the topics and threats that we're talking about. And then the other thought I had was just that when we present our information, to be bold, but also to not offend, which is kind of a sometimes difficult balance, but.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree with both of those.
Okay, perfect. Do we want to summarize then? Anyone else have any thoughts to share or questions?
I can summarize.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm like trying to coordinate two things. I'm here, guys. I'm listening. Okay, so for the first question, did we just go through all the questions, right? And then, okay, I'll just read what I wrote down. So for did you start the button?
Yep, we're
Whatever.
good.
Oh yeah, we're already there. Never mind. Sorry, guys. Okay. So it says, what do you think it all means? What do you think it means that all people are entitled to their own opinions, but not to their own facts? So he said that everyone has their own view, but when talking about truth, facts are always facts. No matter how many people say something, it doesn't make it right. Truth is not determined by numbers. Why can statements that begin with "I've heard" or "you know," they say, be so dangerous when articulating your point? And you said that there's no validity or research to back up the claim. It's immeasurable when it comes without data or credentials. You said, so far we've learned the importance of having the doctrine in our hearts. Why do you think it is important to have good science in our minds and mouths? So that it adds validity and evidence to our words and provides not only a religious reason, but a scientific reason as well. There's education behind our views. We can combine our educated opinion with our religious opinion, not just solely have our religious views, I guess. If you were to pick a side on Common Core debate strictly based on the information from evaluating research, which would you pick and why? And we chose against Common Core. We said that the facts reported, the reported number, I don't know how to explain this. The facts were that the reported numbers were false. The whole Common Core curriculum provided no evidence to say that it would be truly beneficial for kids or children. It was a pushed agenda with powerful people rather than a true evaluation through the proper people. And a lot more. Do you think that much of the Common Core curriculum ignores empirically based, developmentally appropriate practices for children? Why or why not? We said yes. Yes, it does ignore it. It's based on standardized tests and levels of accomplishment rather than creating lifelong learners. Education should fit the needs of the child, not the other way around. And the whole point of DAP or developmentally appropriate practice is making things individualized to children's needs, not making children all the same. Then what have you learned from cultural imperialism about the persuasive function of research and science in creating cultural change? We said that research tends to take a back seat, and that many times if you have the right position, money, or influence, you seem to get more of your voice heard than if you actually do your research. People let social media educate them rather than really looking up the facts and figures. And then what lessons have you learned to make you more skillful in combating your chosen topic or set? And we said that we should be more educated in the sources we choose to support our ideas, making sure that we have taken a thorough look at the research. Yeah, that's it. Anything we missed? Is that good?
That was good.
That's great.
Yeah,
okay.
That's great. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. 2 o'clock on Wednesdays works for everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And we post
Perfect.
this, right?
Yeah.
The summary? Okay, cool.
Sweet.
Okay.
Thanks.